Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Tuesday morning webinar for outdoor adventure marketing. Today we're going to be talking about the 5 expert strategies to leverage call tracking for your outdoor adventure marketing activities. Again, I am Adam Arkfeld. I'm the owner of Outdoor Adventure Marketing. We're a digital agency that specializes in lead generation for outdoor adventure companies. So if you own a company that does ATV tours, jet ski, skydiving, Segway tours, ziplining, anything along those lines, we are a company that specializes in your type of tour-related businesses. We're located in Tempe, Arizona. We have 11 now full-time in-house staff, and we just drive prospects to your adventure tour business. Again, my name is Adam Arkfeld. I'm the founder of the company, father, cold brew enthusiast, and digital marketer business owner. So we've been running digital marketing for quite some time now, and these weekly webinars are for outdoor adventure companies just like you to learn a little bit more about the digital tactics in the digital marketing realm to help you grow your business. All right, so getting started. When we talk about call tracking and digital marketing, and welcome Kevin, good to see you joining, thanks for joining. When we talk about call tracking, a significant amount of lead activity comes through phone calls. I think everyone knows that, and pretty much every tour-related business owner would agree with that. But the real question is, where are those calls coming from? Are they generating lead activity, and how are employees handling those lead inquiries? So there are a number of aspects around call tracking and incoming calls that are question marks for a lot of companies. So the question is, are your employees, sometimes asleep on the job? Are they doing a good job? Are they potentially simply being rude? And where are the calls coming from that are inbound to your tour company? The other aspect of this is your advertising actually working, and what aspects of your advertising is working? So many of you are running different types of advertising campaigns. You might be running print material or Facebook ads. You might have a car wrap. You could have billboards, flyers, Facebook ads. There are a number of channels that people use when they are advertising their tour companies. And it can oftentimes be very, very difficult to identify where leads are coming from and if those advertising channels are working, especially when there are phone numbers and phone calls involved. So when you're running things online and you're doing lead generation through lead forms or social media or your website, it's really, really easy to identify where a lead's coming from. But oftentimes when someone calls in and you say, how did you hear about us, you might get some sort of generic response, or you might get, and I don't know, I was just looking online, but that could be a Google AdWords ad, it could be organic search, it could be a YouTube retargeting video, it just could be a lot of different things. So call tracking, one of the main benefits is to identify if your advertising is working and which channels are working best. So today we're going to talk about 5 expert strategies to really leverage call tracking in your outdoor adventure business. Strategy number 1 is simple. It's set up call tracking. If you don't have call tracking set up, then you can't really roll into the expert strategies, and it's a lot easier to set up than I think a lot of people realize. There are a variety of call tracking services out there. The one that we use and we're most familiar with is CallRail, so I'm going to be referencing that company quite a bit today. But it's very easy to sign up. You can do it right online, and then you can start selecting and using call tracking numbers very, very quickly and easily. So, the screenshot I have here shows toll-free numbers that are a little bit more expensive, but you basically add tracking numbers. They're associated with your account, and then when you want to track a certain marketing campaign, you would use the number that you've selected and created and use it on that flyer, maybe even on that car wrap. You could use it on that brochure. So then when someone calls those numbers based on those different marketing mediums, you know exactly where it's coming from, what piece of marketing is generating that lead. This is entirely web-based, so there's a web-based platform, and you are able to set up notifications, recordings, you get statistics, you get all this additional information that you don't get with just a traditional phone line or in a lot of cases VoIP services. If you really want to get fancy, you can also port your main phone number that you use all the time into CallRail so that literally every single call that comes into your business is tracked. And there are some reasons you might want to do that, which we'll talk about a little bit later in today's webinar. All right, so strategy number one, simply set up call tracking. I feel like a lot of people that we talk to don't have it set up, and it's incredibly valuable. All right, strategy number two is listen to recorded calls for quality assurance. When people are calling into your business, a lot of times you don't know how the people answering the phones are doing. Are they doing a good job? Are they answering the questions in a pleasant manner? Are they trying to close the business? Are they trying to upsell? You might hear them every now and then when you're in your place of business, but in reality, you don't hear the majority of calls, and you don't know how those people might be doing. So you can listen to recorded phone calls to identify their performance. You are also able to identify if people are asking for things that maybe you don't offer. So if you offer a certain type of, if you do ATV tours and there's a lot of people calling asking for ATV rentals, and that's something that's maybe been on your radar, you can get a pulse and an idea if maybe offering rentals in the future would be a good way to secure additional revenue. You can identify if calls are going unanswered. If people are calling and the phones aren't being answered for whatever reason, you're too busy, it's off hours, something along those lines, you can see that. And in some cases, we've seen that phone systems that businesses have set up are routing calls incorrectly. The wrong people are getting inbound lead calls, and they're either not being answered or they're being answered in a way that's not conducive to how you want to run your business. So if your phone system is not routing calls correctly, then the inbound leads are going to have an experience that's not exactly what they're looking for. The screenshot below that I'm showing in the middle of the page here shows just a small subset of calls for an ATV tour company that we manage, and we have tagged these. So we listen to all of the calls that run through our clients' accounts, and we tag them as a tour, a qualified lead, or a rental, a duplicate caller if they're calling back. So this information is really valuable when you're going back and looking at the quality of a campaign to identify if this campaign is generating traffic, what type of traffic, and if they're qualified leads or something else. So strategy number two, listen to those calls that are coming in, make sure that the calls are being recorded, and you will gain a lot of insight from listening to calls that you probably wouldn't have expected in the first place. The third strategy that we're going to talk about today is tracking calls by their lead source. I alluded to this when we first started the webinar. In call tracking software, you have the ability to create tracking numbers for individual sources of traffic. If you're running an AdWords campaign, if you're running Facebook advertising, if you have organic advertising going on, referrals, whatever the case may be, you can route the traffic, you can create phone numbers based on where the traffic has been routed from and then show different phone numbers to those consumers. For example, if you have a landing page that you're driving traffic to from a variety of different areas, you can create 4 different phone numbers for the, I think I spelled referrals wrong on that slide. Anyway, you can track 4 different phone numbers based on the 4 categories I'd put above. And if someone comes through AdWords, Facebook, organic, or referrals, all 4 of those people coming from different sources are actually going to see 4 different phone numbers. Those different phone numbers that appear on the page are then going to track which campaign the callers are calling from so that you can then report on it later. So hypothetically, let's say that you received 4 phone calls, you're running these 4 different channels, and you see that 3 of them came through Facebook and 1 came through organic and none of them came from AdWords or referrals. You know that your Facebook campaign is outperforming your other campaigns, and you can then take appropriate action if needed. In this screenshot, I added it to give you an idea of what types of options you have. When you're running search, you can say if anyone's visiting from a Google paid ad. You can also do organic here. If someone's coming from a very particular website, a lot of tour companies have relationships with the city or the state that they're in that refers traffic to them through their visitor bureau. So if traffic is being referred to a landing page or a website, and you get a lot of leads from that, you can actually say, hey, I want to show a particular phone number coming from the Visitors Bureau of my state, and therefore I will know how many leads are coming from that source of referral traffic. You can change the phone number based on the page someone lands on, based on custom parameters you throw in, if it's direct traffic, Or you can also tell it just never to swap or always to swap, or if you're using it in a Google Ad extension, mobile extension. These three do the same thing. It just categorizes the call a little bit differently so that you know where the call is coming from. But in some cases, you actually don't want a phone number swapping on your website. You just want to see that the phone number is not swapping on the website. You just want to know where the call is actually coming from. So that would be an example for the Google Ad extension. So that's the third strategy. Tracking calls by your lead source allows you to identify which marketing channels are doing best. The fourth strategy is integrating call conversions with AdWords advertising. Call conversions with AdWords advertising can be done a few different ways, but they can sometimes be a little bit tricky when you're using a call tracking phone number. The platform we use is CallRail, like I mentioned before, and they have a number of integrations, three of which I'm showing here on the screen. The dynamic number insertion allows you to swap the phone numbers based on the last slide I was showing you, which is the third strategy. Google Analytics allows you to track conversions in your analytics account. And then Google AdWords is obviously your paid advertising. When you integrate CallRail with Google AdWords, it actually identifies a conversion with the keywords that are being clicked, so you know which keywords are converting the best. It tags not only keywords in AdWords with what converts, but it also tags the call in CallRail with the keyword that someone searched for. So when you see the call come in, if someone's searching for ATV Tours Phoenix or ATV Rentals Phoenix, you're going to see that keyword search come into your CallRail reporting system, and you can then take appropriate action when you're calling them back or listening or trying to identify what type of lead it was. From a performance perspective, you can pause underperforming keywords that might be showing up in your AdWords account. So if you're spending quite a bit of money on a particular keyword, you can pause that underperforming keyword and start saving some money and reducing your overall cost per lead. So integrating call conversions with AdWords advertising is incredibly important because a lot of lead generation comes from AdWords, and being able to associate those keywords with your AdWords advertising allows you to really optimize the campaign as you start building your digital marketing presence. So that's strategy number 4, integrating with AdWords advertising. The fifth strategy we're going to talk about is setting up call flows. When someone calls into your place of business, a lot of times you need to change the way that the call is handled based on the time of day, your tours, who's working. A variety of factors will affect how you want that call handled. This is basically an advanced version of phone routing. Some VoIP systems already have similar types of call flow setups, but with CallRail, it makes it really easy and it gives you a lot of options. So a couple of the features that we use and see quite often, we use them here at Outdoor Adventure Marketing, but we also see them being used with our clients. One is simultaneously ring multiple numbers. So if you have people that are sometimes out on tours or out on your property or in the office, you can have calls simultaneously ring cell phones, your office line, or any number of people. So that's really nice to make sure that calls are never missed. You can also tag calls based on the call flow that the call goes through. You can say, hey, if the call does this or this or this, I want to tag it this way. That can help with the reporting. That goes back to the tagging that I was showing you a couple slides ago in a previous strategy. If a caller is calling from a particular geographic area, you can actually route that call differently. You might potentially want to route calls differently from someone local versus someone out of state or East Coast or something along those lines. So that's one option. And then ultimately you can send a caller to voicemail. So depending on how your phone system is set up and if you're doing simultaneous calling and how you want people to be notified when a call comes in, you can send them to a voicemail within CallRail in this example, and then everybody on the notification list will receive a notification that a voicemail was received, and then the appropriate person can take action based on how you've set it up within your company. So the fifth strategy is setting up call flows, which is really, really helpful to make sure that you're managing those calls correctly. I also threw in a bonus strategy that isn't necessarily call tracking, call handling, but it is associated, and you will be seeing it in a lot of the call tracking software. And this is text messaging. Text messaging is obviously a very predominant way to communicate these days. With the millennial generation, they prefer chatting over text versus phone calls. They oftentimes don't answer phone calls and won't return voicemails, and they certainly won't leave voicemails. So one way to combat that is to communicate with that generation, which is getting older and definitely becoming a more predominant buyer within the economy, communicating with them the way they like to communicate, which can be text messages. So you can talk to them about availability, how many people they have in their party, and you can do this all through an online chat interface within your call tracking system. That's very easy to type and manage and collaborate and have multiple people messaging someone. You don't need to give your prospective customers your cell phone number and then be texting them. You can actually run text messaging through the tracking numbers you set up within a system like CallRail and then be messaging those people as if you're chatting online, so it can be very quick. It doesn't have to be typing on your phone, and you also protect the privacy of your cell phone number or your staff's numbers or whatever the case may be. And if certain people are in the office and others aren't, everyone can be collaborating on those phone numbers and those chat threads within the CallRail system so that leads are never dropped and never lost. So I wanted to touch on, just before we closed up the webinar today, I wanted to briefly touch on how much it costs. And pricing is variable based on a number of things. The most important things you'll want to look out for are how many local numbers you get in your plan, how many non-local numbers you get in your plan, so toll-free numbers, and those are typically, they cost a little bit more money, usually something like $2 more per month per number. The number of minutes you get in your plan, and then the number of text messages if you're doing that. So when people are calling in, it'll track the number of conversation minutes that are being logged against your account, and you usually get a certain allowance, but if you start exceeding that allowance, then it's something like a couple cents a minute. So to give you some context, CallRail, the system that we use, it starts at $30 per month. That gives you a couple phone numbers, it gives you a block of minutes, and some text messages. That's their starting monthly rate. It's very nominal compared to a lot of other services that we might run. And call tracking metrics is another one. Just as an example, that starts at $19 per month and has similar plan details and characteristics to CallRail. There are quite a few different call tracking services. If you just Google it, you can find a number of different options. We would certainly recommend starting with CallRail or something like call tracking metrics because they're very legitimate call tracking services in the industry. And we've been really, really happy with CallRail. So to wrap it up, call tracking is just incredibly important when managing your business's marketing and quality assurance. They're bringing traffic in through phone calls and through phone numbers is great in all your marketing material, but to know exactly which marketing material is performing best is really important and can sometimes be a little bit confusing. So by using call tracking, you're able to then identify where those leads are coming from. So the 5 strategies and the bonus strategy are, one, just set up call tracking. Most people we talk to do not have it set up already. So get that set up. You can start very basic and then make it more advanced later on. Listen to calls for quality assurance and to learn what consumers are looking for. So if you are doing call tracking, make sure that you're setting the recording option to yes and set the disclaimer if you need it. You want to track calls by call source for marketing purposes. Where are your marketing dollars performing the best? Integrating conversions with AdWords, if you are running AdWords marketing, is incredibly helpful and important to reduce wasted ad spend and make sure you know what people are searching for that are eventually converting. Setting up call flows with your inbound calls for improved call handling is great to manage the internal stresses of potentially getting a lot of calls or getting calls that are being missed. The call flows really help improve that issue. And then text messaging is the #1 way to be communicating with millennials these days. They are just not that interested in communicating via phone, with phone calls, voicemails, leaving messages. None of those things apply to the millennial generation. They are well past it, and there's a little bit of discord right now in the marketing world with the generation beyond millennials where they're used to phone calls and then that generation not be, and so there's a bit of a communication gap there. But with text messaging, that gap can be bridged. So that's all for today. We are Outdoor Venture Marketing. We specialize in lead generation for outdoor adventure companies. As I mentioned at the top of the webinar, we do jet ski, snorkeling, snowmobiling, ziplining, all sorts of outdoor adventure companies. If you're interested in chatting, contact information is on the screen. And next week, we're going to be talking about the can't-miss strategies when advertising to the millennial market. I touched on it a little bit this week as it related to text messaging with call tracking. But that millennial market it's massive. It's becoming more prominent and more dominant in the economy, and being able to communicate with them in the way that they like to communicate is definitely a priority and important. I'm going to open up to just a couple of questions. We are right at about 20 minutes. If you have any questions, please go ahead and throw them up there in the chat, and I'll make sure I address them. I did have a couple questions come in already. So one of the first questions is, what if I don't want to change my phone number? If you don't want to change your phone number, you only have a few different options here. For something like a tour company, changing your phone number is generally not the biggest issue, because people are calling and contacting you only once, maybe a year, or every 2 years, or something along those lines. So people are not contacting you all the time, so having a different phone number generally does not cause a persistent issue. However, if you don't want to change your phone number, you can actually port your main phone number into CallRail, and you still get the same call tracking features. It just lives within the CallRail interface, and they then kind of have control of it at that point. But I know that you can port numbers back and forth through different services. So if you don't want to change your phone number, you can port it into CallRail and then run call tracking on all of those, all the calls that are coming into your business. Another question that I have here is, do clients, if people are our clients, do they get recordings of the calls, and basically who's listening to the recordings? So a couple questions about call recordings. If calls are coming in and they're being recorded, no one's listening to them unless someone goes in and has to. So in the case of outdoor adventure marketing, our account managers listen to the calls to make sure that they're being answered, that the right questions are being asked as it relates to the services we're advertising and the services the business offers. Make sure that there's no misalignment in the advertising. So on our side, the account managers are listening to calls, tagging them, and then reporting on those tagged calls. When it comes to listening to recordings of the calls, that's definitely a possibility. CallRail has client access, where we could actually give you access to log in and listen to calls if you wanted and receive notifications. Or we can simply send you recordings if there are a few calls that just need to be listened to for what we call learning opportunities or quality assurance or something like that. I do have another question here. Does CallRail integrate with my current phone system? CallRail is not necessarily a phone system integration. Basically what happens is there's only two scenarios. With CallRail, you will either create new phone numbers, and everything's recorded online, so it's not really part of your phone system. So if anyone calls one of those new phone numbers that's created, then they will just go through the CallRail system. It'll be recorded, tagged, and all that sort of thing. The other option, when it says integrate with my current phone system, is that if the number's ported into CallRail and someone calls the number, it'll go through CallRail and record it, but it'll also ring your phones as normal and forward to your current phone system. So by default, it's not integrated with your current phone system, but it can integrate with your current phone system. So that's the situation there. You would have to actually have it ported over, which takes about 4 to 6 weeks. But once it's ported over, it's fully integrated. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. It's been a great week. And if you have any additional questions or need any more information, please let me know. Otherwise, we will see you all next week. Thanks, and have a good rest of your week.